Hello, everyone. Hi, good afternoon. Welcome here. And especially, I warmly welcome Rodrigo Ballester. Thank you for accepting the invitation. We have a very hot topic, and I hope everyone is very excited. Let me very quickly introduce our guest. He's a ministerial commissioner for the internationalization of higher education and research. And he also, Rodrigo, leads the Center for European Studies at the Matthias Corvinus Collegium at MCC. And he has a very, very long CV, and I hope you got familiarized with it because it shows why he's the expert on the topic of Erasmus. And we will get to the gist why we need to talk about it. But before we get to the more difficult questions, let's start with something more personal, because you yourself were an Erasmus student in Germany while attending originally university in Madrid, and then you attended university also in Brussels, now living in Hungary. So one could say you traveled not only your own country, but at least Europe around. Did it give you something special perspective? Why someone should be an Erasmus student? Why do you think it's important?
Thank you very much, first of all, for being here, for this invitation. I'm really delighted to be here. There are a majority of students in the room, so any questions you may have at some point, we will also find the time to answer your questions. So again, don't hesitate. I'll be happy to shed a bit of light and to answer to everything you always wanted to know about the mobility. And let's start with Erasmus. So yes, I'm a bit of a special case because basically I grew up in France. I studied in my country, in Spain, then also in Germany as an Erasmus student, then in Belgium, in Bruges. Then I moved to Brussels, and I'm here in Hungary. So I'm not the perfect example of of somebody who normally only travels for a little bit. This is what I did all the time, and still, it's true that it's something I will recommend with a little footnote, is that it's important to leave. It's also important to come back, but both are important. And sometimes it's true that I hear some students telling me, yeah, but I don't want to go on Erasmus or on exchange because I will lose a semester, for example. I will lose some credits. I'm skeptical about it because you might lose them, but it's worth it. It's definitely worth it. For example, when I went on Erasmus, even though, yes, I was very used to travel, but this Erasmus exchange in the university, what did it bring me? Concretely, the possibility to improve my German. After 1 year in Germany, if you do not commit the mistake to only stick around with people your nationality, because what would be stupid is to go to Germany to improve my Spanish. If you really mix with the locals, first of all, you come back with a new language on your CV. Very, very important. Second, you indeed know people from everywhere else in Europe. And you don't always meet people from Lithuania or from Cyprus. And it's more than parties. Again, sometimes it's studying together, it's working with them. You can make very, very good friends with different perspectives. That's a bit of a cliche, but believe me, it helps. It helps, and it brings something to your perception and also to your CV. Third, you grow up. Because when you go as an Erasmus student, let's say when you are 20, 21, this is the first time you're going to feel like an adult in the room. You might have to rent one room, you might have to live on your own, you might have to work a bit to make also some pocket money because neither the scholarship or your parents will cover everything. And so, again, you indeed grow up. So this is the beginning of your adulthood. And also, something that is very useful for a professional life, you start making contacts. So after 1 year in Erasmus, there are friends you will invite to your wedding, and they will stay friends forever. There are also people who will be very good professional contacts. And it's useful. It's useful sometimes to imagine that for those who are going to do a PhD, you can also hear about the possibility to have a co-tutelle or to have some postdoc courses in other countries. Well, this is again a very good network to start investigating what you're going to do next. So I was in Erasmus almost 25 years ago. I'm still in touch with some of my Erasmus friends. So by all accounts, it's worth it. If you don't improve your German, you will improve your English, because this is what you're going to speak with your flatmates, and maybe this is how you're going to follow the courses in a given university. And at the end of the day, this is something that is going to improve your CV and your perception, and you will come back here to Hungary, for example, honestly, with a different position. You would have grown up as adults. And so that's why, if this is the price to pay to lose a semester or to lose some credits, please lose them and finish your studies 4 months later is definitely worth it.
Thank you. I think our friendship goes back to somewhere when I told you that I was an Erasmus student in Spain, but don't worry, we are not going to switch to Spanish. I think now the question comes, which everyone is the more interested in, is the Erasmus situation. And our students are very lucky here because we are a state university, so they can still attend Erasmus programs. But what's the situation and the debate now with Brussels and with the European Parliament? And are we affected as a state university? Because one can hear that the relationships with international universities have changed. Does it affect the ongoing programs, and how is the debate? Are we winning the debate?
I can tell you a lot of things about that. The first thing I wanted to tell you is that me as a former official of the European Commission, so basically I dedicated 20 years of my life to the European Union. This is what I studied in Madrid, European law. Then I went to the College of Europe in Bruges, which is really like the mecca for EU studies. I worked in the European Parliament. I passed a competition to become an EU civil servant. I spent 13 years of my life in the European Commission. And so basically, I grew up in France, as I told you. My father actually worked also for European circles. So I'm really the perfect product of a European mind. And the first thing I want to say is that I don't have words to describe the shame I feel at this politicization. I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed that I work in the European Commission, because those are basically, it's mostly the European Commission pulling the strings of this situation. Of course, with the European Parliament barking, and at the end, 25 member states deciding on that. So I will give you more details, but the second thing I want to tell you is that no matter how infamous, unfair, ridiculous, counterproductive it is, the impact is very limited, whether we like it or not. Whether they like it or not. First, a university like Ludovica, basically, you are still within the Erasmus system. The partnerships with other universities have been kept. So for you, there's literally no impact except that you might have a reputational damage because, it's a Hungarian university, and then you're going to put all the universities in the same categories. And given the level of politicization of a lot of Western universities today, that can happen. I'll give you a concrete example that happened basically 2 months ago. You had a press release from the University of Amsterdam saying that they will interrupt all cooperation with Israel and with Hungary. That's pure politics. And this is wokeism in action, which is something that happens a lot in the Netherlands. And the University of Amsterdam is actually has the reputation of being like that. So if of course some universities play politics, then yes, they might say, I don't want to side with a Hungarian university like Ludovica, who is for example promotes defense, because defense is not politically correct. And if that happens, I would say good riddance. I'm very happy that my kids will never go to the University of Amsterdam, a place where you can be raped on the street or you can be attacked, especially if you're Jew, for example. So sorry, I'm going to be super politically incorrect today, okay? And feel free to ask me all the questions that you like. Feel free to contradict me, but I'm going to speak up. And so that may happen. But otherwise, from a legal point of view, for example, a university like Ludovica is fully within the Erasmus system. And to my knowledge, no partnerships have been interrupted or anything. The situation affects 21 Hungarian universities, which are the universities that choose, and I insist that choose, It was not an obligation. They just chose to become public foundations. Public foundations mean basically that this is a way to get much more autonomy and be able also to run your university in a more pragmatic way and more like an enterprise, where you're going to basically be able to take the most rational choices to have more students finding a job at the end, where you're going to get the funding according to some objectives. One of them is the internationalization, another one are the publications, and also the dropout. So it's a very rational way of running a university, and this is something that exists in many other countries in Europe. And of course, the European Union didn't say anything about them. If you want examples of, for example, ministers sitting in the board of a university in Western Europe or even in Central Europe, I can give them to you. But of course, it was not a problem because only what happened in Hungary can be a problem. And so it affects them, yes, because the students and the researchers of those universities are now excluded from Erasmus and from Horizon. Horizon is the research program. Excluded means that a Spanish student can come to those universities, but Hungarian students cannot get the money in order to go to a Spanish university. This is what it means. So it's a financial thing. It's basically the exclusion of the funds. It goes deeper than that because this is the legal situation, so it's only a matter of funds, but a very miscommunication of the European Commission, especially, I don't know if they did it on purpose or not, but at the end, it led to the interruption of some partnerships between those 21 universities and some other European universities. But it's also true that this Erasmus program has been very much replaced by a program called Pannonia. Because as I told you, it's a matter of money. What Hungarian university students cannot get is the Erasmus funds. But legally speaking, they remain within the network. And so now we have Pannonia. And Pannonia basically is giving you even more money to do the same exchanges. And so that's already something better, actually, because with Pannonia, basically, you have many more opportunities and you have more money to travel. So there, the impact is very, very limited on mobility. Where you do have an impact is that Erasmus also, it's a lot of money that universities can get, to do some of the type of programs and projects. It's not only about mobility. And this money, they don't get it anymore. So there is a financial loss for sure. Think about the reputational damage. When it comes to mobility, if any one of you in the room doesn't study in a university that is under sanction and wants to travel, you still have countless opportunities.
And in the beginning, when you were explaining your own experience, you said you sometimes have to work while on Erasmus to have enough money. Is it going to change, or has it changed with the Pannonia? And also, is there any difference between the Horizon and we also have a new research program, the Horizon? Is there any difference between the two?
Yes, starting with Erasmus and Pannonia, basically Pannonia, you have more money and you have more destinations. And so maybe I don't know if you want to work at the same time, which is something I would recommend. I am a big believer of summer jobs and things like that. You can still do it as well. But with Pannonia, you do have more money and you do have countless destinations. Because also one thing with the Erasmus controversy is that, there's a planet beyond Europe. Huh? No, the academic exchanges do not stop in Europe. And I just give you an example now. Since the entry into force of these sanctions, we have 10% more international students in Hungary. We had 40,000, now we have 45,000. So it's not even working. They still come because, of course, the academic reputation of Hungary, maybe it's bad in Brussels, but Brussels is just a tiny little spot in the world. And Asia is looking at Hungary. India is looking at Hungary. South America is starting to look at Hungary as well. So again, yes, the future does not belong to Europe only. Huh? And so in terms of connectivity, it's not a good strategy to only put your eggs in the same bag and in the same basket, sorry. And so again, the impact on mobility and on the let's say the attractiveness of Hungary for foreign students is limited. Horizon is a different story. First, Horizon, so the EU Horizon is 93 billion euros. It's a lot of money. 93 milliard. Nagyon sok pénz for 7 years. It's also a program that has its own problems because it's very ideologic. Some of the critics you hear against Horizon from France, for example, is that this program is used to promote political Islam. So it has been very much infiltrated by what we call the Muslim Brotherhood. This is a fact. We have a lot of scholars, even members of the French Parliament, who are criticizing that. The other problem with Horizon is that, yes, it's extremely bureaucratic, and third, is very geographically unbalanced. Since basically Hungary and the other member states from 2004 joined, it's still a program that favors much more Western European universities than Central and Eastern universities. So it's geographically extremely unbalanced. So again, there is a loss, but since anyway they were not getting a lot of funds, you feel it less than they think. What does Horizon do? Horizon, first, the name is of course meant to be a bit of a provocation. This is a program that is, of course, doesn't have 93 billion euros for the next 7 years, but is much more flexible. It doesn't have a lot of bureaucracy, and it allows one Hungarian university from the 21 that are excluded. So, for example, Ludovica couldn't apply to Horizon, could not apply to Horizon, I repeat. And so one Hungarian university from this 21, it allows them to have quick grants, 1 million, to partner with top universities. And the first call was extremely successful. For example, you have now Hungarian universities partnering with Oxford, Cambridge, Singapore, Stanford, really the best of the best of the best. And so it will be done again soon. And again, Horizon is a way as well to promote Hungarian research in a more agile way, with less money, but in a more agile fashion. And so the first call was very successful, as I said. But for example, this is something that for which Ludovica couldn't apply because it's not part of these 21 sanctioned universities. And just to give you a last example of how stupid this exclusion is and how inconsistent with the EU policy, I just tell you that today, as we speak, Russian students are entitled to have an Erasmus grant. They are eligible under Erasmus. So despite all the sanctions and all the fuzz and how bad Russia is, their students can come as Erasmus students to Europe. Hungarian students from these 21 universities cannot.
It's crazy. Are these Hungarian programs going to replace the EU programs, the Erasmus and the Horizon, or are they going to live together? Can the state university students apply to the Hungarian programs? What are the technicalities, just very shortly, so we don't bore the students?
Those programs will live together. In harmony, basically. I mean, you know, your question basically, Enikő, is when is this Erasmus situation going to be solved? Well, I tell you, there is very little will of negotiation from the European Commission, close to zero, and it depends actually on other political points of the agenda, mostly the war in Ukraine. So whenever they feel, they start negotiating, and whenever they don't feel, they stop negotiating. But there is a case in front of the European Court of Justice. So 6 Hungarian universities lodged a complaint against their exclusion. And we might have a decision by this year, end of this year. So this is what we are waiting for, because if we are waiting for some, let's say, good faith in negotiations in Brussels, we didn't have it so far, and we won't have it, I guess. Because it's a political vendetta, and you know, after what happened in Romania 6 months ago, we can see that, yes, there are some people who are ready to play under the belt. And this is exactly what they're doing with that. And so even if the situation with Erasmus or Horizon will be solved tomorrow, Pannonia will remain, because it's not exactly the same purpose. And Horizon will remain as well, because this is, again, it's such a successful program, will not be stopped. At least not in the near future. And same thing with Pannonia. Pannonia is somehow more flexible and gives you more destinations and more money. It's not going to be stopped. I think what matters with the Erasmus controversy is that it's a matter of principles, it's a matter of honor, it's a matter of unfairness. But again, as I said, mobility is not really at stake. And here, any student in Hungary from those 21 universities who wants to travel abroad will. That's a certainty. It's an absolute certainty. What is true as well, that is more like a cultural issue, I would say, is that, as I said at the beginning, Hungarian students some of them are still hesitating to move. Whether it is with Erasmus or Pannonia, they don't feel this need, and they are sometimes a bit reluctant because they prefer to finish their courses before. And so at the end of the day, it's not so much a matter of Brussels, a matter of money, a matter of destination, a matter of mobility. It's like, I mean, would you like to travel? Would you like to spend 1 semester minimum or maybe 2 abroad in a country where you don't speak the language, for example? I mean, I'd be happy to hear from you. I mean, if I ask you now, I mean, how many of you are considering studying abroad? That was a question.
And please feel free to ask while I'm still having my own questions. I have many regarding this topic, but you will have time, and anytime you want to, just raise your hand. And I also had this question, not only because we are all expecting this debate to end, but when the Pannonia and the Horizon started, some sounds believed and they wanted to think that it's because that's one step closer to leave the EU, that we are doing our own programs, our own funds, and maybe that's because we are closing, and in fact the national strategy is based on connectivity, but they believe that this is one step further from the EU. So it's good to hear that we are trying to fight to get back to Erasmus, and at the same time we are developing our own programs.
Exactly. Both ways.
Both are needed. And you mentioned just shortly, but I want to touch on that point with some elite universities, because there is also a tendency that smaller universities, those less developed regions, is it a real risk to get more dependent on these funds, that some smaller universities will depend academically and maybe ideologically on the bigger elite universities? And let's think about the English universities or in the United States. And also in this line of thought, I was also thinking about the language we use, whether you think it helps English to spread more, and then we will have less studies, courses in our own national language. Do you think Erasmus and international mobilities affect this tendency, or it's...
It could be a risk. For example, in the Netherlands, the new government is putting a limit on international students because it became too popular to study there. And they also ask universities to give more courses in Dutch. Because in a country like the Netherlands, where people normally speak very good English, the language is very similar to Dutch, then Dutch was almost like excluded from the academic offer. That's unlikely to happen in Hungary because your language is very different, because you are very attached to it. But it's true that an excess of internationalization could lead to that, and we are seeing that in the Netherlands, for example. This being said, I'm not so worried about financial dependence on anything. First, for example, those funds like Pannonia or Horizon are used by the end users, by students and researchers. Look at the model, the new model universities in Hungary. Basically, it's meritocratic. If you deliver, you get the money. If you don't deliver, you don't get the money. So it's really by objectives. You cannot get dependent on that. Maybe under the old model where you're going to get your money anyway, which is also the main model in Western Europe, then yes, you can become less dynamic like that. But not with this new model. What I'm a bit more afraid is like this influence of some universities that are indeed very ideological, but still have good brands, great names, you know, look at Colombia, for example. We hear about them in the news that they are blocking the campuses, that some Jewish professors were blocked, that now they have problems with the new Trump administration because they don't get the money anymore because of their obsession with DEI, diversity, equality, and inclusion. Also because they, they allowed like some open and blatant anti-Semitic demonstrations in their campuses. But it's still Colombia, you know, and if I would ask you, okay, would you like to study in Colombia? Probably you would consider it, no? Because the brand is still there. So it's very paradoxical that the best brands, the ones we know best, are the universities that are most affected by this ideological nonsense. But yeah, the brands remain there. And of course, it's not the same thing to study physics than to study gender studies, for example. So what I'm also a bit skeptical is about this obsession with rankings. Now, rankings, especially in Asia, is basically like a Bible, like the Bible. And everyone looks at those rankings and the QS and THE and stuff. Okay, it's important. They can help you make a choice. But I would say that they should not be more than orientation. And so the dependency I fear the most is indeed like the dependency of those brands and also the dependence on those rankings that sometimes are taken too seriously and like a dogma when actually, yes, the people who are elaborating those rankings have their own interests.
I will have a very theoretical question now to think about, and then I would like to give the chance to the audience, so please prepare your questions. And it's on the idea of ideology, but also with connectivity, because I'm always thinking, and also when I was on my Erasmus, I started to feel more connected to Hungary, although I was quite far, but it somehow made me miss my country more. But sometimes you also see that people became very European and they lose their national identity, especially nowadays when it's really not trendy to feel connected to your country. So what do you think these mobilities rather help to have this European feeling, or and maybe is it against the national identity and feeling strongly connected, or is it the other way around? What's your idea?
No. I mean, you are the masters of your fate, and it's for you to decide. What I see is that there are different possibilities, but one of them is that you appreciate more your country when you have the occasion to travel as well. So you leave your country, sometimes that's the only reference you have, you tend to criticize it, and suddenly you go to another country and you also start realizing that is much better than you think. It's a bit like missing your parents, you know. You're 20 years old and your parents, they are a bit has-been for you. They are growing old. You don't like them so much like when you were a child. And suddenly you go 1 year abroad and you start missing being at home, and you start feeling nostalgic about it. What is the real risk of going on Erasmus, for example, or on any type of mobility and not coming back? Basically, two things that you cannot really master. First, are the professional opportunities. You might get professional opportunities abroad that you like more than here at home. That's one possibility. And that's less and less the case, because here in a country like Hungary that is economically dynamic, basically Central Europe is very dynamic, not only Hungary, Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Romania. Some countries are less dynamic. If you look at Western Europe today, you know, for example, a country like mine in Spain, I wouldn't say it's an El Dorado for young people. It's not. And so it depends on that. And also, I mean, don't be afraid after 1 year of mobility to maybe find some traineeship, a job abroad, because 2-3 years of experience can also be extremely positive. And then the time to come back will arrive, because with this experience, you will have a boulevard of opportunities here in Hungary. And then another thing that can happen to you, and that's not under your control, but again, that's not a joke. It's important, but your personal life, you don't know who you're going to meet. You know, mobility brings serious partnerships as well. when I was in the European Commission, in the cabinet of the Commissioner for Education, we were celebrating the 30th anniversary of Erasmus. And one of the slogans we said was like basically 9 million people benefited from Erasmus by then. But it also led to 1 million babies. This is what, okay, we didn't have the figures, but it was a nice slogan, and that's probably likely. And so, yes, if you meet somebody from another nationality and you fall in love and you want to have something serious and found a family with them, that might happen. Some people came to Hungary because of that. Huh? So that might happen, and this is not under your control. So, but yeah, the factor of your personal life is very important as well. And this one is actually beyond your control. But what I'm saying is that the main model is leaving 1, maybe 2 years, and then people tend to come back. The vast majority of the people tend to come back. And in my experience, you come back being very happy of traveling the world, but you're even happier that after traveling the world, to go back home where you belong. And actually, Enikő, I disagree with what you said at the beginning, that it's not trendy to like your country, to love your country. The trend is changing very, very much, and especially among the young people. And especially there's absolutely nothing incompatible with traveling and liking your country. Look at myself. I barely lived in my country, but I only speak Spanish to my children. And I only have one nationality.
Thank you. Please, if you have a question, raise your hand. So I will stop myself talking. There's a...
Greeting. I would like to ask you about short-term mobility. How widespread are they? What opportunities, what platforms can be used in order to apply to it?
Yes. Well, I can give you a perfect recipe and a website where you can apply and things like that, and where do you get the money. I'm going to tell you that first, you have countless programs among universities, starting with summer courses. And in a lot of web pages, and notably Erasmus, can also help you benefit from that. And by the way, from whatever university you come, because those summer courses, if you want to apply for a summer course grant under Erasmus to go to another university abroad, you can do it. And so, yes, universities have countless programs, and they're very good normally. So when you have 3 months of holidays, like you guys do, my advice is 2 weeks in the Balaton is more than enough. Okay. Work, that's very important. So try to improve your CV while you're on holiday, and go to the summer courses. And normally when you apply to a summer course and it comes with a fee, normally the university already tells you if it can give you a specific grant or not. And for example, Pannonia, you can use it for short-term mobility. Short-term means normally 2-3 months, but you can also use it for very short-term mobility. So my first advice is go to the Pannonia website, which I think is pannonia.hu, and there again it's extremely flexible, and again there is money behind. Do it with a little bit of time. Maybe it's a bit late for this summer. But for example, mobility doesn't mean 1 year, does not even mean 1 semester. It can be 1 trimester, for example. So if you're still afraid of moving too far or moving too long, shorter mobility is possible. It's a good solution. It's a good compromise. And yes, the answer is yes, Pannonia can fund them. So pannonia.hu.
If you feel more comfortable asking in Hungarian, you can, and I will try my best to translate. But while you are still thinking, I want to touch upon two topics, and we will see if we have more questions and time. And it's about the future, of course, the outlook. And there are two indicators which might change the future of mobility. And I will start with the easier one, or the lighter one, is digitalization and the internet and everything which comes. What do you think? Is it going to change mobility? Because people still like to travel, but people also like to just stay at home, have online courses, do you see any trends going towards the digital courses and programs? And what's your perspective? What's your idea?
Yeah, what is my opinion? So first, the trend. The trend is that you have more and more online classes, for example, also that count as shorter mobility, that can be also count as international exchanges. And that those can be good opportunities. But otherwise, I don't, mobility is like books. There's 20 years I hear that books will disappear. They don't. Mobility is the same. Any student who had an experience during the COVID about studying one semester online, everyone prefers in-person relations and teaching, students and professors. And of course, digital might complement physical mobility, but I don't think it will replace it. And this is my personal advice. I will strongly recommend you not to bet too much on digital and virtual exchanges and virtual teaching in general. And even homework, I don't recommend it, especially when you're young. I tell you my experience. When I started working 20-something years ago, my network, my friends, even my wife, I met them in person, in the workplace. And especially, personal relations aside, your network matters. 10 years ago, when you went to the European Commission to do a blue book stage, a traineeship, you could meet very, very interesting people who could help you in your career after, who could recruit you, who could teach you a lot of things, that you could invite to conferences and things like that. And that doesn't happen when you do things online. So when you're a trainee in the European Commission and you do it from your flat and you don't meet anyone and you never meet the whole team and your traineeship is only virtual, you get nothing. You get not even 10% of what you are supposed to get. The best ideas I had during my career, the best projects I pushed, were born in the corridors of my office, talking to colleagues, exchanging with them. And so at the end of the day, this is how it works. And again, it makes you learn much more. I'm not a big fan of those big consultancy companies where they tell you, you know what, you can work from Ibiza if you want. Good. I'm sure you can work from Ibiza on a consultancy project here in Hungary, but you will never get to know your colleagues. You will never meet your client. It doesn't work like that. I'll give you another example. When I was working in the European Commission, like some 12 years ago, I was working with migration, in the field of migration with Africa. So my role was to go to Africa and to start speaking about a very thorny, sensitive issue like migration with sub-Saharan African people. And for them, migration resonates, it's a bit humiliating, it resonates with colonization and things like that. And every time I was traveling there, sometimes I was traveling to Ghana, to Nigeria, it's far, it costs money and everything, true. And some colleagues told me, oh, why don't you do it on Skype? And I was saying, you think that you will even get the attention or the respect of your African counterparts if you speak about migration on Skype? You can speak 50 years on Skype with Africans on migration, you will get nowhere. Because they want you there, they want you to come, they want to shake hands, to look at you in the eyes, to see how you breathe, to see if you respect them, to see if you know their culture, to see if you respect their culture or not. And this is after, maybe one visit just to build trust. This is the moment where you start speaking business. So be it in the private sector, you need to meet a client. Be it as a diplomat, you need to meet your counterparts. I'm absolutely not a big believer of virtual exchanges. If it allows you to complement some things, and God knows you have some online courses that are cheaper, you don't need to travel, good. But if you're going to base all your strategy on that, you're dead, honestly. I don't recommend it. So good as a complementary tool, but I remind you that meeting in person is, be it in your personal life or in your professional life, it's unbeatable. Nothing compares to that. So I'm very skeptical about digital replacing personal relations.
I think it's a great life lesson, not only about international exchanges, but something to take with you later on other experiences. And now if you have any questions in English, Hungarian, please raise your hand, or I will get the last one as well. It's a bit more difficult than digitalization, but still the future of mobility programs and the connectivity with other countries. And one might say that some parts of the world are getting more dangerous. We have wars, the situation is getting more volatile, let's say. Do you think it's going to affect mobility programs? You already mentioned there is something, some sanctions with Russia because they are in a war, but it's not the way, as I'm asking, that they are still in the programs, but there would be countries where we will no longer be able to travel or anyway.
Like Amsterdam, maybe. First, I mean, don't hesitate to ask any questions, to criticize, to challenge. If you want to also get more information about the situation with Erasmus, any critics, no cancel culture here. I take all of your questions, so don't be shy. Security. Well, security, that's one of the things that makes Hungary so attractive, first of all. Because it's true that, for example, if you live in a big South American city, that can be dangerous. As a father, as a parent, you're happy to send your daughter and your boy to a place that is safe. And Hungary is one of them. And it's true that one of the things you realize when you travel abroad is how safe this country is and how safe this city is. And this city is a big capital. I mean, and very few things happen here. This is not the case in a lot of big capitals of Western Europe, where the situation is degraded. It's getting worse and worse. The cities where I lived, Brussels. In Brussels, last year we had 10 victims of narco shootings in the street. Today in Brussels, the main station, the main Pályaudvar, la Gare du Midi, is a very dangerous place, for example. Barcelona is becoming also a dangerous place, for example. Paris as well. Not Central Europe, absolutely not. Warsaw, Prague, Budapest, for example, are not. And so that can make it attractive. Still, in the rest of the world, you have a lot of safe places. For example, think about Central Asia. Central Asia is a very safe place. I'm going to give you an example as well, but that's of a very safe place that used to be the most dangerous one in the world. Medellin. You remember Cartel de Medellin? So it's the second city of Colombia. And this is the city that in the 90s, 95, you had, they told me, because I was just there like 6 weeks ago in Medellin, in Colombia. Between 90 and 93 in this city, you had 45,000 murders. So the whole stadium murdered. 45,000 people died. You know about Pablo Escobar, you know about this horrible series in Netflix that is glorifying him. Well, this guy was a calamity to the city. But 25 years later, 30 years later, Medellin is a safe place. I've been there 6 weeks ago, and this is a place where I'd rather send my kids to Medellin than to Amsterdam, for example. Because it became a very safe city. Not as safe as Budapest. There are still some neighborhoods that are a bit dodgy. But yes, you can live in Medellin and you can feel safe there. And Central Asia is pretty safe. Some parts of South America are safe, some are not, but some are very safe as well. And so there the advice would be, I mean, maybe it's not a good moment now to have an Erasmus in, I don't know, Gaza, for example. Yes, okay, fine. But even in countries that seem to have this reputation of being a bit dangerous, if you select the city and the university and you are a bit careful, it shouldn't be a problem not to go there. For example, you would have never chosen Medellin. I will tell you the opposite. Medellin is a place that is worth it. It's a place that is safe enough for you, absolutely safe enough. And there again, if you go there, you're going to discover, I mean, you're going to open your horizons very much and your personal landscape. Because also the temptation with mobility is to go next door. It's for a guy from Mexico to go to Spain. It's for a guy to Brazil to go to Portugal. It's for a Hungarian to go to Serbia or to go to Austria. Okay, why not? But the real thing is to go is to go to Hong Kong, for example. Very safe place, by the way. But yes, it will be difficult in Hong Kong to order food in a traditional restaurant or to get a passport done or something like that. And if it's difficult, then go for it. That's the message. Go beyond your comfort zone. Between an Erasmus in Vienna and an Erasmus in Medellin, go for the Erasmus in Medellin, for the exchange in Medellin, for sure.
In your name, I will now promise the audience that in the next 5 minutes, when you're on your way out, they can stop you and ask, because they were too shy now. But as we are closing, I would like to ask you to summarize your idea about Erasmus and your advice maybe to the students. How would you put it shortly?
If I had only 10 seconds, and I have more, I would tell you to take any opportunity that will make you travel out of your country for at least 6 months, and at least once. And I will also tell you to come back. Since I have a bit more time, I'm going to elaborate on that. Mobility is a bigger asset in your CV than to finish your studies 6 months later. So do it. And it's true that I fail to understand why Hungarian students do not have such an appetite to travel abroad. So don't be shy about it, and take all the opportunities. And opportunities you have countless. You had many more than my generation, who had many more than the previous generation. So no one has ever been better placed than you to basically collect all those opportunities. And those opportunities are Pannonia, for example. You have a lot more of other scholarships. It can still be Erasmus, by the way, in many ways. And again, this controversy is very unfortunate and is infamous, as I said, and I feel ashamed about it. Shame about Brussels. But de facto, in your daily life, it doesn't affect you so much, especially if you study in Ludovic, it doesn't affect you at all. So you cannot even take it as an excuse not to travel. And again, don't be afraid about the language skills neither. Something I very often see in Hungary, and this is also an advice that I give you as a foreigner who is already settled down here. I spent here already 5 years. I will probably spend 10 more. I love your country. I love to promote it, to defend it in many ways. But you guys are shy for the languages. You are shy in English, for example. You always think that your English is not good enough to talk to me, to ask me questions, not good enough to go on to apply for a scholarship. And it's not true. Your English is actually better than the average. It's just that you are not totally confident in it, and this is something that you have to get rid of. Because if you're not going to take those opportunities thinking that as long as my English is not perfect, I will not apply, then your English will never be perfect. Because actually it happens the other way around. Once your English is good enough, this is the moment where you apply to a place where you're going to improve your English once and for all. And so don't be shy, don't wait to the world or the circumstances to be perfect for you to apply. Don't do that. Do it now. And yes, again, there is a beauty in traveling. There's a beauty in discovering things. There is beauty in discovering things that are totally different. For example, yes, you will go to Spain and you will discover the beauty of having lunch at 3:30. It will be shocking for you, but you will do it at the end. And yes, to do many other things. And it's also a way to appreciate more what you have at home. And so once you will be back, you will be happier to come back. And again, you will come back with many more skills that will certainly serve your country and serve your own career. So yes, now let me ask you this question, and this is a direct question. How many in the room did already travel abroad, like did the academic mobility? How many of you already did it? Okay. How many are considering this mobility? Good. How many are not considering this possibility?
And the others are not responding. They are still thinking of whether after this conversation they are going to apply.
I will be very tempted to ask why not. So the two people who are not considering it, miért? Why?
Let them give a chance to tell you later.
Okay.
They are quite shy.
Perfect.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo. And it was a very nice closing remark, I think. Thank you for being with us. After reading your QR code, stay with us because we are going to have a very interesting conversation in Hungarian about education. But before you leave, please give a big applause to Rodrigo Ballester. Thank you for your time and being here.
Pleasure, really.
Thanks to you.